right.
Yeah.
So we're gonna start off with Upwork. I just think it's extremely important that we all know how to use Upwork, what it is, where the value lies, and just a quick overview of the platform. We're not sponsored by Upwork. We have no affiliation with Upwork. I just use it heavily and I love it. Is anyone here not familiar with Upwork.com? Is anybody familiar with Upwork.com? All right, cool. Got some hands. Awesome. Perfect. All right, so I'm going to share my screen and we'll kind of just jump right into Upwork, and then we're going to be covering live chats, and then we're going to move to open discussion. All right, so if you listen to the podcast, I've definitely been going hard on explaining the value of freelancers, because when you are looking for somebody that y'all can all see my screen, the Upwork screen. So when you want to do something within your marketing strategy, oftentimes if you have a marketing coordinator or manager, they're not going to have competency in literally everything. Like I've been doing it for 8 years and I still don't know how to do all the things in regards to marketing. So it's important for us to find people that do things well, like MSP Camp for content. Like we just specialize in content. So it's like, hey, I'm going to use MSP Camp for content. I'm going to use someone else for this. I'm going to use someone else for this. And that's one of the biggest values of having someone in-house, like a Jamie, like an Angie, is they can manage all that. We can put together a really nice, beautiful strategy. And instead of just laying it on the backs of the marketing coordinator, we can say, okay, here's your budget to get people to help execute on your strategy. So one example of a challenge I had early on is I know content, I know ads, but Facebook is such a pain in the ass that I was like, I don't know how to do this correctly. Like, I don't know how to set up conversion tracking the way it needs to be set up. I don't know how to do the pixel the way it needs to be set up, etc. I know how to run ads. I know creative, but I need help on that piece. So that's such a good example of being able to jump in. Well, before you jump in, you really want to get the exact thing you're looking for. What are you trying to do? Make it very specific. We are trying to set up conversion tracking within our Facebook. We want to make sure our business and ad manager is set up. We want everything good to go so I can start running ads and tweaking myself. I don't need somebody to run my ads for me. I need somebody to set up all the back end stuff that's going to take me way longer. I'd rather pay somebody. You post that as a job under post a job. If you look at my jobs, you can see we have a ridiculous number of jobs. We've hired probably, you know, probably 20, 30 people at this point on Upwork. Some really, really talented people. Um, and sometimes you hire someone you don't like. And that's the cool thing is you can just end the contract. You don't have to fire anybody. You're not committing to anything. You're just saying, hey, we're going to try this. If I don't like you, I'm going to find somebody else. So they're incentivized to keep you very happy. So once you have the detail of exactly what you're looking for, you say, okay, I'm looking for, Facebook, someone that has really good experience in Facebook advertising. Um, and what's great is it tells you their hourly rate, it tells you their job success, how much they've earned on the platform. So obviously, we usually want to go with someone, with 90s. I usually will click US only if it's something, of very high importance. If I'm doing list building, right? Like if I need to find a list building, and again, before I start looking list building, I am putting together a post of I'm looking for dental offices with 10 to 100 employees, X number of satellite offices in these areas, these titles, etc. You want to be really specific about the list. I have a guide on list building. But now, once you have that and you posted a job, I'm not going to do US only for that. I just need somebody to build me a really good list. So you can come in here, at 625, this guy's got 95% job success, $6.25 an hour. I'm going to have him manually build a list in my area instead of me having to do it. Like, hey, I need you to verify that email's right. I want you to go on their website and scrape this for me. I want it to be a manually built list versus just jumping on Zoom info or just jumping on whatever. It's just grabbing a list. Like, have somebody spend 300 hours building a really good list for you, or 100 hours building a really, not 100 hours, sorry. No, like spending 30, 50 hours on this thing. And that's what I found to provide some of the best lists. So that's just an example of really identifying what specialty am I missing in my marketing strategy and jumping on Upwork to find somebody to complement what you're doing. I've found so much value in this over the last few years that I just really wanted to make sure we all knew about this and all knew how to use it. Another example is webinars. We do a lot of webinars. If we had to plan the webinar and do the webinar and all that, it would be very time consuming. So I would rather just pay someone $300 to $500 for them to create the perfect presentation, because this is what they do all day, to give the presentation, and I get to just market it and then take that content and distribute it. So we would say, hey, I'm looking for, a Teams, Microsoft Teams, right? Because I want to do a webinar on Microsoft Teams. I'll find Sarah, she's $110 an hour, 100% job success, and I would say, hey, how many hours would it take you to do this? Are you comfortable with presentations? And I would maybe jump on an interview with her. So that's just a really good example of now I can do webinars on literally any topic. Like we've done webinars on Excel, Power BI. If you're in an industry like dental or manufacturing or construction, you can find an expert in the program. And it's not how do we back up the program? It's how do you use this program more effectively? So this is such a good way of finding specialists instead of us trying to have to do everything ourselves. So I just wanted to kind of cover that really quickly. A lot of us may already know and be comfortable with this. For others, this might really be helpful. All right. Another one last nuance on this before we move on or jump open to questions is I've actually seen MSPs that use Upwork to find excellent IT people. So if they're really crunched on time, they need somebody to help with that SharePoint migration or help with that server move or whatever else. They've actually jumped on Upwork and found a specialist to assist in that situation. So not just on the marketing side, but also just general competency. You can find somebody for anything on the site. Right. So Brian said you use a list builder instead of a cleaner. Not sure I know. I'm not sure I understand exactly, but yeah,
so we use Seamless.ai. We use a
Oh,
cleaner.
nice.
We use it to go through, and then we have someone come in and just clean the list to make sure before we send out mailers or whatever, the person who's going to get it is the right person. They're still employed. It's the right. They're not at a business. That kind of stuff. So if you're doing it a step ahead and making sure that the data is coming in is already clean, then you don't have to do that. I guess I'm just curious how you.
Yeah, that is the way I do it. Is I'll actually have to build a list from scratch. But I like what you're saying too, because I've heard Seamless is good. I've heard a lot of Brian Gillette recommends it. I've heard a lot of people talk about it. So you'll actually get that list,
Yep.
and then you get on Upwork.
I actually have somebody who I already work with.
Okay,
That's a
nice.
friend of mine who just does the calls for me. Really, it's the same kind of script you're talking about. They'll pick up the phone. You have 10 machines. Is this the right person? Are they still employed? What's their email address? They don't even have to talk to the person. They just talk to the gatekeeper, and that's it. And then we just say we're going
Wow,
to send out a mailer to you to give you some free information, and then it gives us a reason to for me or somebody else to make a phone call behind that and get that person on the phone.
that's a beautiful system. Hunter at Comtech, who the guy that gave away Tesla, does the exact same thing, and he said that system where he actually calls not even to set the appointment, but to verify the name on the list has helped him, I don't know, really get more appointments. Are you seeing something similar with that
Yeah,
process?
yeah, it's been much better. Yeah.
Nice.
So
What
how
kind
how
of,
do you? Oh, I'm sorry, I'm so
no,
sorry.
go ahead, Ali.
How do you verify that, Brian? Because we did the same thing with Upwork, and it was the disastrous results. So we couldn't verify. The person was saying, "Oh, this is correct, correct, correct," and later we found out no, he just put it there and charged us hours. So even though I had good reviews, how do you verify that?
So what we do is the very beginning of the process, we go from a list, so you can either use Zoom info, we use Seamless AI, we go in, we scrape what we're looking for. We like to work in the medical space, so we like to look for cosmetic surgeons. We like to work with non affiliated surgical centers. There's a bunch of them in our area. So we'll look for those. We'll create that list. We'll give it to somebody to clean the data. They'll actually make a phone call. They'll inform that the person who they're speaking to, which is usually the gatekeeper, let them know that we're going to be sending them out some information. Want to confirm that the person we're going to send it to is still there, and let them know that just verify some information. We'll ask a couple of like just basic questions like, how many PCs do you have? Do you have in-house IT? That's basically it. We don't want to get too far into the weeds. And then once we get the information cleaned, then we know we can take that list. And that list is now at least initially verified. They're qualified, right? We know that they meet our basic qualifications, and then we can send our mailer out, and then we'll have an SDR follow up with that behind that, and then they'll be the one to set the appointment.
But is the person that scrubbed the list is in-house person or it's outsourced?
So it's actually a family member of mine. So I have him working on it right now. So
yeah, my problem was it was outsourced and we didn't verify it, and we got a bunch of incorrect information from him. Later we found out he really didn't call. So yeah.
Right. So I think Tar, in one of the podcasts, you actually mentioned you use somebody and for like the SDR work, and you mentioned like the recordings. We do the recordings on everything. We record and we verify that all this stuff is happening, and that we're going to spend, I wouldn't say several thousand, certainly several $100, maybe $2,000 a quarter to send out a mailer. So I don't want to waste just $2,000 flushing it down the toilet if it's not going to go to the right people. So we want to make sure we verify that stuff.
I'm curious, Brian, at what point do you filter out the independent locations? One of the things in where I'm at, seems like almost everybody's getting bought and as part of the bigger conglomerates.
Yeah.
Do you in that first call confirm that, or how are you doing that?
So they're, at least in my area, it's pretty obvious. They love the bigger houses, the bigger medical houses love to announce the fact that they're related. The surgical centers are definitely getting bought more. Cosmetic surgeons themselves, their affiliations, their practices are left independent because there's not really a benefit from the hospital's perspective, at least not the medical systems around here, and that could change. The surgical centers, the one in particular that we've worked with for years, they started out as just cosmetic, and they've quickly turned into basically anything you can do. What do they call it? Outpatient. So that's been bought by a pretty large health system, or at least part of it. So, but we'll usually ask the question. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
That's good stuff. And then what mailers are you sending out right
now? So a mix of yours, and we're also members of TMT, so we use some of their stuff as well. Yeah.
Cool. Awesome. That's great. Yeah, I mean, I love that process. Hunter at Comtech was talking about doing that exact same thing. So yeah, that seems like really good best practice. Takes a little more time, but that's like anything in marketing. The more time and effort you put in, it's usually the better results you get versus the easy thing. So nice. Awesome. So that was kind of the first thing I really wanted to cover on Upwork, is just how to use it, why to use it. There's going to be times we hire duds. That's going to happen, and we just have to fire them quickly. And I still give people good feedback because I'm probably shouldn't, but and then get somebody else. So I love Upwork. There are other sites. There's Fiverr. Fiverr's helped us with when we get CGI, like the Ram Eating Monster, for instance, CGI, that was from a really good CGI artist from Fiverr. So when we have a bigger plan, we don't have CGI in-house competency, well, we get to hire someone really good from Upwork. So just wanted to share that. There's also tools like onlinejobs.ph, where you can hire full-time people from the Philippines. Not as much of a fan as that, because I'd rather just kind of get somebody project-based, and it seems like in those situations you have to hire full-time. There's a lot more question marks on that site. So I don't usually recommend that. Just throwing that out there, that's a thing as well. All right, moving on.